Mayor Watson, members of City Council. The rhetoric that advances Indian status or federal recognition as the only true markers of indigeneity is tired, archaic, and perpetuates colonialism. Non-status Algonquins are real Algonquins. Many of our people, including my own father, rejected the notions of Indian status and did not require Canada or the Indian Act or anyone else to tell him who he was. He and many other Algonquins lived on the land and resisted the many pressures to relocate and assimilate. Others were disenfranchised through gender discrimination, education, military service, or the two-generation cutoff that still threatens to disconnect future generations of Algonquins if we rely on Indian status to determine who is a real Algonquin. In fact, our petitions to Canada and subsequent promises for 4 additional reserves throughout Algonquin territory on the Ontario side are a testament to the Algonquin presence and legitimacy. Algonquins in Ontario were not and are not confined to the tiny 1,840 acres of reserve land at Golden Lake. In comparison, it would be like suggesting that the only real Algonquins in Quebec are those who settled at Kitigan-Zibi. There are 8 other Algonquin reserves in Quebec, and if historical circumstances were different, perhaps they too would have been denied additional reserve lands. Canada tried very hard to convince all Algonquins, including those in Ontario, to relocate to Kitigan-Zibi. The Algonquins within Ontario petitioned incessantly for recognition and reserve land in Ontario, resisting these pressures for decades and generations. If it were not for the increased pressure of settlement, resource extraction, and the creation of Algonquin Park on the Ontario side, we too would have additional reserve lands. This is a significant colonial injustice that we are now seeking to reconcile through the Algonquins of Ontario treaty negotiations with the Government of Ontario and Canada. Pikwakanagan self-government and economic development, self-determination through every avenue available to us. Rather than undermining our self-determination and perpetuating colonial divisions, the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan have taken an inclusive, nation-building and reconciliatory approach to our present and future. In addition to the broken promises for reserve land allocations in Ontario, we have also had to work to restore our nation in the context of the intergenerational effects and ongoing pressures of assimilation. Many of our citizens attended Indian day school or residential schools. Many were apprehended during the 60s scoop or excluded through gender discrimination. And through these traumas, our families have been disrupted and damaged. Our culture, language, and governance structures have been nearly lost. And the integrity and independence of our economies has been damaged. Those of us who have survived owe it to our ancestors to rise above these notions that Indigenous identity and belonging are determined by a piece of legislation designed to eradicate and assimilate us. We owe it to those still living as well, such as Lynn Gale and Cindy Blackstock, to name only 2 in the sea of advocates and activists, and the countless others who continue to dedicate themselves entirely to fight for justice and equity. The recent media attention on the subject of pretendians or race shifters, those who exploit a distant and tenuous Indigenous ancestry for personal gain, has brought more attention to an issue that many Indigenous communities have been battling for many years. Countless hours have been dedicated to addressing this issue for the Algonquins in Ontario. Many individuals have been removed from the AOO list over the years, as the AOO have taken steps to identify anyone with a tenuous or mistaken claim to Algonquin identity. We have worked very diligently to strengthen the criteria for enrollment, requiring anyone who wishes to register to demonstrate and sustain connection to original historic collectives. It is not possible to be enrolled in the Algonquins of Ontario with only distant heritage, as has been suggested. Many AO members who have satisfied the criteria are status Indians under the Indian Act. They include both on-reserve and off-reserve Pikwakanagan members, and many others who have status under the Indian Act. The AOO has made a commitment to be inclusive and not to confine their membership to the dictates of the piece of repressive colonial legislation that is the Indian Act. The Algonquins of Ontario are the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan and vice versa, real Algonquins, as they say, and are in control of the negotiation of our treaty, self-government, and other expressions of self-determination. All identity politics aside, we are real and true partners in the Taywin Development Project, and we are proud to be part of an environmentally conscious, sustainable urban development, rather than be relegated to the far reaches or to the reserved lands. We are taking our rightful place in Ottawa, Canada, and the global community. It's quite disappointing to receive such ardent criticism from the Quebec Algonquins when there has been many sincere efforts to rebuild the Algonquin nation throughout the watershed, rejecting the geographical colonial divisions of the Ottawa-Ontario border. We have welcomed the Quebec Algonquins to the Algonquins of Ontario negotiation table to address their concerns head-on, an invitation that was ignored or rejected. We have supported the assertion of Algonquin control over 100 Wellington Street, issued several letters of support for their projects and initiatives, and jointly expressed concerns on many issues in Ottawa. These recent public statements by the Quebec Algonquin chiefs are contrary to the momentum of the nation building that I believed we were engaged in. We do owe it to our ancestors to rise above this divisive, non-status nonsense and focus on decolonization and reconciliation with willing and able partners in the city of Ottawa and beyond. We have been able to build relationships and opportunities as the Algonquins of Pikwakanagan First Nation and as the Algonquins of Ontario by offering a sense of continuity and inclusivity in our approach to rebuilding the Algonquin nation. We hear gratitude and commendation from all sides for the intention of Mayor Jim Watson and the City of Ottawa to make reconciliation a priority, and for taking action on that priority. However, we seem to differ on the approach we must take to achieve this. We are doing our best under the circumstances, given the history and ongoing challenges, and we recognize that we may not achieve the perfect or the ideal. We are open to adjustment, adaptations, and collaboration across the river, though we will not confound well-intentioned efforts or stagnate in our pursuit of a just, prosperous future. We have 5 living chiefs in Pikwakanagan, previous councillors, administrators, professionals, academics, our ancestors, and our descendants yet to be, all making up the collective wisdom of our people, ensuring that we carve out our best possible paths forward. While we are part of the broader Algonquin nation, we maintain an element of autonomy and independence as well. We hope our respect for community-level wisdom, autonomy, and authority is reciprocated by other Algonquin First Nations. The reality is that we need everyone, every Algonquin citizen, empowered individually and collectively, to build the nation and our shared futures. We cannot achieve this through exclusion and division. We must remember and embrace our 7 grandfather teachings: courage, respect, humility, love, truth, wisdom, honesty in all our dealings. It is important to state that our approach does not, nor has it ever, prohibited or excluded the Quebec Algonquins from pursuing development opportunities or asserting their presence or jurisdiction in Ottawa in any way. Personally, I would love to see the day that there are sustainable, prosperous developments owned and controlled fully and jointly by the Algonquins of Ontario and Quebec. Even with these recent tensions, I will not allow this to be stricken from the realm of the possible. Thank you. Miigwech. Merci beaucoup.